D.E.I, Divide et Impera. From the title and from the cover art and also from some images I've seen online, I thought that this game was about wargaming in the dystopian, frozen wastelands of the future. The sad thing is that, yes, dystopian, frozen wasteland, although the wasteland is London, basically, or whatever is left of it. But the game is not really a war game. There is a way of eliminating game pieces of the opponent, but that is usually not very profitable. It's not what you will want to do usually. This is a area majority card driven deck building game in which you will use actions to place your units on the board in different areas. You will move them around to take control of outposts. If you have majority, then you take the cube of one of these outposts, and there are red, blue, and green outposts, and you place in your personal display, indicated now you control that. You will use your people to take control of these resources. We have technology and power cores, also known as circle and triangle. Also, you may have noticed that there are multiple levels here. This represents, yes, areas on the ground and buildings, and there are game effects that will allow you to jump from the ground on top of a building, move on the roof. And since getting on the roofs is a little more complicated, usually that's where the triangles, the power cores are, because they are more valuable as resources. We also have drones that are these game pieces. Each player starts with a card in their personal deck that allows them to control a specific drone, a specific mecha. But as the game progresses, I said there is a deck building element. You may be able to acquire cards that allow you to use different drones, even though you didn't have their card at the beginning of the game. So it's not really that they belong to a faction, rather a faction has a way of controlling them at the beginning of the game. So, and also you probably noticed that the board is modular, so we have different pieces that can also be placed in different orientations, well, just like that. And what you see here that I set up for you is the game setup for 2 players. Then you use 9 tiles, and then you have other tiles to create a larger board for 3 or 4 players. Each player has a personal display, such as this one, with a tile representing the leader of their faction. Each leader has a unique ability that, however, only applies to their unique figurine. All of the others people in your party, called scrappers, they're all the same. I would call this game as modestly asymmetrical because the players have unique decks with different combinations of symbols, but it's not vastly different. Each has a card for a specific drone, but the people may be able to acquire cards for that same drone, and one of your figures has a special power. So there's a hint, there's a splash, there's a dash of asymmetry. Now, the game is played in 4 rounds. Each round is divided into 3 action phases per player. So I go take my first action phase, everybody does so, then everybody takes their second, and so on and so forth. Also, certain things happen after the second and the third action phase. But let's talk about the action phases themselves. When it is my turn to take my action phase, I will I'll play 2 action cards and performing whatever actions are given to me. All of my cards are available to me in my hand at the beginning of the round, kind of like Wings of War style. I play a card, I perform the actions indicated there. If it's 2 different actions, I can perform them in either order, it doesn't matter. And then I play another card, and I perform the actions indicated there, and that completes my action phase, and then everybody goes. Now, instead of playing a card face up, triggering the icons and performing the actions, I can play a card face down. That indicates that actually I'm buying a card from one of the markets. There are 4 markets, 4 are associated with colors matching outposts on the board. So red, blue, and green for blue, green, and red. Each market has 3 cards that are available, and the markets associated with outposts have a requirement. So to buy that card, I need to have control of 2 outposts on the board. For that one, only 1. For that one, I don't need any outposts as a precondition, and then I need to spend power cores and or technologies as indicated there to acquire a certain card. Once I acquire a card, it goes into my hand immediately. So actually, if I decided to buy as my first action, I can use for of an action phase, I can use it right away for 8 seconds. Also, the cards that you buy, not only are they often better than your starting cards, they also have an amount of victory points that they score. And after you buy a card, you slide down the remaining cards so that their cost becomes progressively lower. Now, at the end of the round, so my personal display may look kind of like this. What happens, the cards that I place face down to signify that I was buying a new card, they go in my recycling bin. Basically, they're out of the game in the sense that I cannot use them anymore, but I still own them for game effects and for scoring at the end. So if I bought this card and later I use it to buy a card, it goes face down here, but its point values will still be scored at the end of the game. As I said, there are a couple of things that happened at the end of action phase 2 and action phase 3. At the end of action phase 2, we check if I'm able to unlock any of my feats. These tiles, you get a blue, a red, and a green one at the beginning of the game. Face down, they come from specific decks, and they have different abilities, different symbols indicated there. But they are pretty good, so you don't know exactly what you're gonna get. But if at the end of your second action phase, you have 2 cubes of a certain type of outpost, meaning you're controlling 2, then you unlock it, and that's it. Now you can use that ability for the rest of the game, and also there are extra points to be scored at the end of the game for unlocking these special abilities. So you check that at the end of the second action phase, and there is a convenient reminder there. At the end of the third action phase, you take one of these tokens and you need to place it. We're gonna move to another part of the play area. You place it somewhere on this display here. These cards represent missions, and you place those cards randomly there at the beginning of the game, and you will not use them all, so that there will be variety in what you get and the order in which they come out. This is the turn order. So right now this is like turn 1. At the end of your third action phase, you must place your token on one of these missions. They represent ways of scoring points, so that is good. And so maybe this turn I decide to place one there, and then next turn I decide to place one, say, there, and then the following turn I place one there. So the icons simply tell you what scores. Here, for example, I will score 2 points for garrisoning a blue outpost, 2 points for each drone cards that I own, 2 points for each building that I built, elevators, bridges, refuges. Now, there is an interesting element here. You see that each card is divided into 2 scoring areas, and the one on top is better. If you're placing your token on a card on the current turn or above, basically in the future, then you get to apply the top half with better results. If I am placing my token in the distant past, then that is before the turn token, then I place it on the bottom, applying the worst result. So, for example, here you're scoring the same thing, but if it's the current round or a future one, you score 2 points per. Here you score 1 point per. The idea is basically that you will be trying as much as possible to do them in order so that you're always getting the top half of the card. Another thing, you cannot have 2 tokens in the same column, so that constricts you. You have 4 turns. For these rounds, you must place one at the end of each round, and so that's the general idea, and this is a pretty substantial source of victory points, so you will want to do that. Once you have the general idea, which is what I just told you, the general script, play action cards, improve your deck and do what the cards say in terms of actions, then all that's left is to take a look at what actions are available. And you probably imagine some of those. Enlisting, which means getting new people. Moving, it's moving. Collecting, it's collecting from the board. But here's the trick. Moving and collecting are the 2 actions for which you must have majority. So if I'm moving into an area, I cannot move into an area unless I have majority at the end of my move. I cannot just move my 2 people in there when there are 3. So maybe I take 2 against 3, don't have majority. So maybe I can just take actions to enlist new people, and now I can move into that area right there. Also collecting. If this is the situation on the board right now, purple can collect those tokens from that space using the corresponding icon, claw machine icons, but orange would not be able to collect. So enlisting, moving, collecting, the 2 that require majority. Buying cards, I showed you that. Building. You have personal tokens that let you build stuff. The refuge is where you can enlist new people. The elevator is how you can jump from the ground to the top of a building. The bridge is it does what you think it does, which is creates connections between different places. And so now I can move from one area to the next. And advanced actions, copy the effect of another action, gain victory points, supplies equal victory points. Kill, again, not particularly profitable as an action, not very interesting. Gaining tokens, technology or energy cells, and some iconography will give you certain actions per outpost that you control. And plus, we have some advanced versions of the basic actions. If you want to know more, you can pause and read them. I don't think I need to go through all of them to give you a sense of how the game plays. So, play your action phases, 3 per round, with those timed checks of checking if you have been able to unlock some special ability, placing tokens on the mission board at the end of the 3rd action phase. Continue like that for 4 rounds, and then you do final scoring. You should have hopefully scored some points during the game because of the missions, and you're gonna get points from other sources such as resources that you still owned, special abilities that you unlocked, we talked about that, outposts that you control, and when you collect points from all possible sources, the player with the highest score wins the game. Nice game, cool game. A lot of different mechanics, but I think they go together pretty well with the hand management, with the action selection, the card driven, the deck building. I'm kind of surprised that they do really fit well together. And it's really nice to figure out, for example, when you're building your deck, each time you're getting rid of a card, functionally speaking. So you need to decide what's gonna not be in your deck anymore. But that also means that your hand of opportunities or possibilities doesn't become overwhelming because all of your cards are available at least at the beginning of each round, and as you of course perform actions and commit to certain things, your options narrow down a little bit, which means that really planning and sequencing actions is of the essence. The board looks really nice. The game has a pretty strong table presence from the beginning when you had these multi-layered tiles to later, of course, as the board becomes cluttered with different factions and they really stand out from the background. Well, I guess that the Frozen theme really actually then is not just kind of cool per se, but it works in making the miniatures stand out, so the game remains very functional because you know where everybody is, but at the same time, it looks neat, and that's not nothing. That is part of the experience. So the area majority element, I like area majority games very much, and it works pretty well here. And I didn't feel that it was restricting or constricting me too much. The fact that you couldn't move into certain areas or you couldn't collect from certain areas unless you got majority. If I really needed to get majority to take an outpost, I was able to figure it out, and I didn't feel the same. I was just wasting turn after turn doing nothing, just amassing massive amounts of troops to move into an area, because actually there were usually something else interesting to do. Well, I cannot take that outpost, but maybe I can take that one. I can get some of the other things that give me different kind of things. So I felt that I had a nice range of options at any given time, and that was like very nice and very cool. The options, the possibilities always felt like rich and interesting. What I also like very much, very much, is the timing of things. So that collecting a certain outpost is more interesting, more vital in the first two action phases of a turn when it can maybe unlock a feat. Later, that's okay if I'm building to the next turn, but if I collect an outpost, I control an outpost at the end of a turn, just because of that it may be taken from me by the time the check comes again, and the same for the check at the end of a round, and the fact that the missions change every time. Ideally you will want to do the missions for your current turn so that you're always in the present and in the future. In the present actually would be ideal, so you get the top card on the mission cards 4 times. It's gonna be difficult because everybody knows that that's what everybody else is trying to do. So the interaction feels interesting, but didn't feel like all that confrontational. The fact that you will rarely, if ever, eliminate game pieces of the opponent. On top of the fact that there is usually better stuff to do. If you eliminate a piece of the opponent, they draw a token, a candy token, which gives them a special bonus. So it really is a game that it's not that violent, and the confrontation is, yes, I was able to place three miniatures where you had two, and now I take a cube. It feels pretty light. It doesn't feel all that confrontational at all. An element of confrontation is gonna be in every area majority game by definition, because I can't have majority unless I take it from somebody else or I prevent other people from having it. But it's not kind of like, rancorous, not the kind of like, negative confrontation feel that you have in other kinds of games. It's a majority, not backstabbing. So I was pretty impressed by how all of these things come together. My only warning may be about downtime and analysis paralysis. I played this game with 2 players, and there was already a modicum of analysis paralysis here and there. With 3 or 4, well, you need to play it with players, I believe, that are very good at avoiding analysis paralysis, thinking on the fly, because there will be times in which the board changes right before the player before you changes the board in a way, and now you have to rethink your turn, and it's constricted, and you need to sequence things well. And if you're just playing tactically, then that may not be the best way, because you find yourself out of position and missing one action and missing one miniature and missing one resource to buy something. So people will want to plan things ahead as much as possible. And if you have to do it, 4 players doing that, I just wonder. I'm not sure, at least some of my players in my game night, they may not be the best at this. I'm just saying out there that you know yourself and your players better than anybody. Other than a little warning about AP for more than 2 players, this game is pretty strong. Strong production, strong gameplay, multi-layer with a lot of actions, a lot of different things to do. Wheels that turn within wheels, but yet at the same time they come together organically, and to me that is a good thing.